Can I take us to Karen?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Can I take us to Karen? I think I can talk loudly enough. To Karen, who works for an organisation which is called New Deal of the Mind, which is about, I think it's about two things actually. It's the same things, Mark. It's about developing the arts as something which more people own, but also about using them in a very focused way. So, Karen, would you like to tell us?
Oh, hello. I run an organisation called New Deal of the Mind. We're a charity. We were formed about 2 years ago, so we're completely different than the V&A. We're much smaller and less well known. But I'm very proud of what we have achieved. And what we do is we put unemployed young adults between the ages of 18 to 24 years of age, into jobs in the arts. And to benefit from our programme, our candidates have to have been on JSA, on Job Seekers Allowance, or the dole, for 6 months or longer. And we place them into jobs in places like, there's some at the V&A, the Royal Opera House, South Bank Centre, National Theatre, most London-based arts organisations, and we also work nationally as well. We work in the North West and also in the East of England. What we found, I think a couple of things that Jean was touching upon. The first of which is we've had incredible success rates. We found that, you know, we're dealing with young adults who have a number of issues. If you've been unemployed for 6 months or longer, it's not just a question of not being able to find a job. You have confidence issues. Some of them have drug issues, not very strong family backgrounds. So what we find is that by getting them these jobs, we're able to not only help them. We found that 70% of the people that we've helped have gone on to either full-time employment or education, which is incredible when you're dealing with such a difficult population. But also what I'm particularly proud of is that we've been able to diversify the demographic of people who have access to the arts. And while I'm not familiar with the audience of the V&A, I am familiar with the composition of the workforce for a lot of these artistic organisations, and they do tend to be very white and they do tend to be very middle class. I'm just looking at this audience now, and there isn't one black person in this audience, yes? And that's quite typical of most arts organisations. And we think that there's basically two reasons for that. The first of which is the nepotism. You need to know someone to get something in the arts. Or you need, I think this perhaps plays more into it, you need to be able to work for free for a certain period of time to get your foot in the door. So that means there's an entire cohort of people who never have the opportunity to work in the arts. So I think one of the things that we're most proud of is that one of our partners is the London Metropolitan Archive. And we have young adults working there digitising old photos of England. Every recruitment day there, 50 kids, white middle class institution, and they've never seen so many black and Asian faces walk through the door. So that's what I'm very, very proud of what we've achieved. And I think the success rates speak to the success of helping these people enter the sector. It's a generalisation, but people who work in the arts tend to be quite good at that sort of touchy-feely stuff. So they're quite good, actually, for our candidates. They're a bit more understanding than if you put them into a Tesco. It's funny, but they are. I think another thing, too, is a lot of our artistic organisations, what they're doing is that they're using the skills of these young adults to help them. Arts organisations are great at reaching out to older adults, traditional adults, but they're not really good at reaching out to younger demographics. So they've got these kids to build Facebook pages for them, to help them with their Twitter feeds. That does a lot, yeah? It really does help out these kids a huge amount. And we found that if you can build their confidence, you're 90% of the way there, you know? It won't be difficult for them to find a job. So I suppose to tie it back to this whole issue of funding, it's very roundabout. But we work with a whole range of arts organisations. We work with the very large ones, and we work with the very small ones, the community-based arts organisations. And I have a feeling about, you know, the difference between government funding and philanthropic funding. It's easy if you're a V&A or if you're a Royal Opera House to go to Coutts, to go to Credit Suisse, to go to HSBC and say, please will you support this opera or will you support this exhibition? But if you're a smaller organisation, there is no way that you are going to get a Coots to sponsor something that you do. You don't have the outreach that these large organisations demand. And I was saying earlier, when we were speaking earlier, that I spoke to someone at the Royal Opera House, and they were saying, you know, the Royal Opera House has actually received the most money from the Arts Council. It's the most recent announcement. She said to me that, you know, in the short term we win, we get the money, but in the long term we lose. And I didn't really understand that, and she said to me, the reason why is that we rely upon these community-based organisations to source our talent. Yeah? They're the ones that are developing the next great dancer, the next great opera singer. We don't do that, right? So if these community-based organisations disappear, it's going to disadvantage, I think, our cultural landscape as a whole. So what I believe is that I think that government funding should predominantly focus upon those smaller community-based organisations that don't have huge planning departments, that don't have the brands, right, to get the funding from those large donors. And then the Royal Opera Houses and the larger organisations should really be focused more upon private giving, such as the corporations and the high net worth individuals.
Can you just say something from your point of view about just very quickly, the advantages and disadvantages of different kinds of bits of money coming through the door?
Yeah, so I think that when you think about funding, I don't think it's just simplistically a difference between government and philanthropic. Yeah, I think that you can divide it a little bit more. I think that, for example, when it comes to sort of the philanthropic umbrella, you look at their high net worth individuals, right? And there are advantages and disadvantages with this particular approach. One of the disadvantages is that high net worth individuals can a lot of the time place onto you their personal goals of what they want you to achieve, right? We experienced it ourselves at New Deal of the Mind, where we were offered money on the proviso that we hired someone's daughter, right? We didn't take the money, and we don't have this daughter working for us. What you also find as well with high net worth individuals is there tends to be a lot of volatility with the type of revenue that they offer. So one year they'll give you a lot of money, the next year they won't give you much money at all. So when it comes to long-term planning, that's quite difficult. Another example of revenue opportunities are the corporate contributors that we spoke about, sort of like the HSBCs of this world and the rest. Great, and they give large sums, but they're more likely to give money to the big brand names, right? Because they've got maximum outreach and they get a bigger bang for their buck. But there's a disadvantage with that, even if you're a large organisation. And I would think, and I don't have first-hand experience with this, is that I think that they would struggle to sponsor something that is quite controversial, right? So it tends to, what I would think, make things very much plain vanilla, right? But I'm sure that you have a point on that. So, and then another example of revenue giving would be the foundations. They're really great. But what I've found is that they're very unflexible when it comes to their support, right? So what they'll tend to do is they'll say, we will give you money to attract new audiences, but we won't give you any money to cover your operating costs. So I don't really know how you're supposed to get the new audiences if you can't pay your rent and you don't have a computer to communicate to people and do your work on. But anyway, and then I think finally, you know, we've got government funding, right, which is really ace. And they don't really tend to really impinge on you the type of programs that you can run, probably the least control-free like all of them. There isn't a lot of revenue volatility, so you can do sort of more long-term planning. But I do think that what they do tend to do is that they tend to change structurally an organisation. From the point of view that if you are getting Arts Council funding, I have to contextualise what I'm saying, we didn't get Arts Council funding. So I applied for it and we didn't get it. So please take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. I'm not really for the Arts Council right now. What they tend to do with government funding is that there is, you have to basically generate a lot of administrative pieces of paper. You have to create policies and evaluations, and you have to standardize a lot of the documentation. So this means you need sort of a whole team to do that. So nothing's perfect. I don't think any of these revenue streams are perfect. And I think in an ideal world, what you'd want is you'd want a mix of every single one of them, right? So you wouldn't be sort of ambushed by one particular source. But I do fundamentally believe that if you're a younger, smaller organisation, that more of that mix should come from the government than a larger organisation which has that brand behind it, and huge development organisations that go after these high net worth individuals, that write all the applications to coups and the rest. Anyway.